linoleum floor, green linoleum, reminiscent of the CID offices at Alexanderplatz. His grey hat looked out of place against the black leather and glittering officers' crests, likewise his coat hanging in the midst of the blue police cloaks. Plain clothes, with nothing but uniform for company. The coffee they had given him tasted like nasty black sludge in a misshapen enamel cup. So the police couldn't make coffee in the 220th precinct either. Why should Neukölln be any different from Alex? All the same, he took another sip. It wasn't like he had anything else to do except wait for the phone to ring. Reaching again for the file, he noted that the various members of the Hohenzollern dynasty and other prominent Prussian figures depicted there were different from the usual schlock. The images weren't copies, but premium high-resolution prints neatly arranged in a file. A buyer would have to fork out a pretty penny. No doubt they were intended for more rarefied circles. A roving magazine vendor had been selling them at the train station at Alexanderplatz, no more than a few steps away from police headquarters and the offices of E Division, when he caught the eye of a patrol unit and lost his nerve. The two officers had tried to draw the vendor's attention to a harmless magazine that had fallen from his sales tray, but as they approached, he hurled his entire consignment at them and took to his heels. Fluttering in the air alongside the magazines were the glossy pornographic photos, just about level with the youthful officer's blushing cheeks. The young pair were so amazed at the artistry that they momentarily neglected to give chase, but when they finally did take up pursuit, the man had disappeared amongst the building works surrounding Alex. This caused the officers' cheeks to blush for a second time when they deposited their findings on Lanke's desk and submitted their report. The head of E Division could be very loud. Superintendent Werner Lanke was of the opinion that congeniality undermined authority. Rath only had to think of how his new boss had greeted him 4 weeks before.
"I know you have connections, Rath," Lanke had yelled, "but if you think you can avoid getting your hands dirty, you're very much mistaken. No one gets an easy ride here, and certainly not someone whose presence I never requested."
Rath's first month in E Division was almost behind him now. It had seemed like a punishment, and maybe that's what it was, even if he had only been reassigned and not demoted. He had had to leave Cologne Homicide, too, but he was still a DI and had no intention of hanging around Vice forever. He didn't understand how Wolter could put up with it, but the work was something his colleague almost seemed to enjoy. Detective Chief Inspector Bruno Wolter, known by most of his colleagues as Uncle on account of his affable manner, was in charge of the investigation team as well as today's raid. Outside in the station yard, where the police van stood waiting, Wolter was discussing individual details of the planned raid with the two ladies from Women's CID and the squad leader. They were just waiting for Jenneke's call. Rath imagined the rookie sitting in the stuffy flat they had sequestered to observe the studio, a pair of binoculars in one hand, the other shaking nervously above the receiver. Like Rath, Assistant Detective Stefan Jenneke had joined Vice at the start of April, freshly assigned to Alex straight from Police Academy in Eiche. But the taciturn blonde East Prussian wouldn't let himself be put off by the teasing of older colleagues. He took his job seriously. The telephone on the desk sounded. Rath stubbed his cigarette out and reached for the glossy black receiver. The police van stopped in front of a large tenement house in Hermannstrasse. Police were not welcome in this part of the city. In the half-light of the archway which led to the rear courtyards, Jenneke was waiting, hands buried in the pockets of his coat, collar turned upwards, and the brim of his hat pulled over his brow. Rath was forced to stifle a grin. Jenneke was doing his best to appear like a hard-nosed cop from the big city, but his eternally ruddy cheeks betrayed the country boy within.